How are you?
Okay, great. Is this on? Okay. Hey, good morning, folks. My name is Drew Gattine, and I am the chair of the Maine Democratic Party. Thank you for coming out today. Thank you for joining us today as we mark World Conservation Day. I'm going to kick us off, and then we're going to hear from some great speakers who have joined us, who are standing behind me. There is probably nothing more that unites the people of Maine than our love for the great outdoors. We are so lucky and fortunate to live in one of the most beautiful places in America, one of the most beautiful places in the world, where we can take advantage of so many outdoor activities that each of our unique and wonderful seasons has to offer. World Conservation Day is a day to celebrate Maine's outdoors and our efforts to keep them pristine so they can be enjoyed by future generations. However, it's also important on a day like today to recognize the threat that Maine's environment faces. And right now, there's one big threat out there, and that is the gubernatorial campaign of former Governor Paul LePage. The prospect of Paul LePage returning to the Blaine House, just down the street from here, poses two major threats to the environment that we all share and love here in Maine. The first is unchecked climate change. While nowhere on the planet is safe from the effects of rising global temperatures, Maine is particularly vulnerable. Cities around our state are facing heightened flood risks. Sea level rise is threatening communities all along our beautiful coastline. Our lobster industry sits and watches its catch move further and further north. And with the Gulf of Maine warming faster than nearly any body of water in the world, and LePage, a climate denier, once again campaigning for governor, the worst may still be yet to come. When Paul LePage was in office, he didn't just fail to do anything to curb or prepare our state for the climate crisis. He actually tried his hardest to make it worse. He repeatedly obstructed efforts to develop clean energy in the state. He put a former oil lobbyist in charge of the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. He was the only governor on the eastern seaboard to advocate for more offshore oil drilling right here in the Gulf of Maine. And of course, climate change being allowed to ravage our state is just one way that a third LePage term would harm Maine's environment. Another is his vehement opposition to land conservation. As governor, Paul LePage went to war against the Land for Maine's Future program, the primary funding source for land conservation in the state. He held up funding for conservation projects all over Maine, including Howard Hill Conservation Area, which you can access in the trailhead right behind me. His obstinate opposition to conservation projects was completely out of touch with what Maine people want, and you don't have to just take it from a Democrat like me. The Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine even went so far as to say that because of Paul LePage, quote, once-in-a-lifetime investments in rural Maine jobs and wildlife are drawing dangerously close to collapse. So at today's press conference, you're going to hear from a number of speakers who have been on the front lines of the progress on both fighting climate change and conserving our environment that has been made by Governor Mills and Democrats since Paul LePage left office. But when you're listening, please keep in mind that Paul LePage represents a threat to each and every part of that progress. We cannot let him get back in the Blaine House and take a wrecking ball to Maine's environment once again. So our first speaker today is Senator Kathleen Breen, who has been a tremendous champion for land conservation and a sponsor of the Land for Maine's Future program bond. And I'm going to turn it over to Senator Breen.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Kathy Breen. I serve as Senate Chair of the Legislature's Appropriation and Financial Affairs Committee, and I have the honor of representing a number of coastal communities and island communities in Cumberland County. I'm thrilled to stand here today with several of my colleagues and fellow activists to mark World Conservation Day. Maine's economy and environment are inextricably linked. Our working waterfronts, forests, and farmlands have powered coastal and rural communities for generations. Our state park system and conserved lands attract visitors from all over the world while supporting good-paying jobs both directly and indirectly. In fact, the increase in outdoor tourism has even given rise to a robust year-round outdoor recreation economy. This is why I'm proud to have finally secured a landmark $40 million investment in the Land for Maine's Future program during the 130th Maine legislature. This is a big deal. I worked for 8 years on this and finally got it over the finish line. Land for Maine's Future is an incredibly successful program that leverages public-private partnerships to protect Maine's natural resources and public lands for recreation and commercial use, as well as mitigate climate change. Since it was established by Maine voters in 1987, the Land for Maine's Future program has protected 604,000 acres of conservation and recreation land. This includes 333,425 acres of working lands. I say this because too often our environment and our economy are portrayed as competing interests, and that could not be farther from the truth. The latest investment from the legislature has already resulted in the approval of 25 new projects. These projects include municipal requests for the conservation of recreational land and land near schools to support nature-based education. These exciting new projects are located in 9 of our 16 counties: Cumberland, Oxford, Knox, Waldo, Hancock, Sagadahoc, Androscoggin, York, and Washington counties. This historic investment in the Land for Maine's Future program is something I've worked for throughout my entire tenure in the legislature. It will ensure Maine continues to benefit from our natural resources and conserved lands for years to come. However, we cannot become complacent. Responsible environmental stewardship is key to our economic success. If we want to continue to reap the benefits of Maine's rich natural landscape, we need to invest in efforts to conserve, protect, and promote these areas amid extreme threats. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Breen. Our next speaker is State Representative Lydia Bloom, who again has been a powerful champion in the fight against the climate crisis in her 8 years in the legislature. Representative Bloom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Drew. I'm State Representative Lydia Bloom. I represent the town of York in southern Maine, really an epicenter of what we are experiencing along the coast. For 8 years, I've been a state representative, and I have been thinking about sea level rise from the very beginning. I worked for 4 years as a state legislator under Paul LePage, and then 4 years under Governor Janet Mills. And the difference cannot be greater in terms of what we have accomplished with this urgent matter of climate change. As I was preparing for this, I recalled my first bill that I put in 2015 that was designed to really mimic what York had done 2 years earlier in 2012, to put sea level rise in their comprehensive plan. What a good idea. And I thought that other coastal communities could benefit from that idea. So I put forth a bill, worked hard, discovered our incredibly deep scientific community that we have in Maine that has been doing the work, knowing what's going on, measuring, understanding, and having great ideas as to how to combat all of these threats. So the bill passed, and I got a veto letter from the governor. And in it was something kind of shocking to me at the time. It said, "Those who can't do, plan." I said, well, is this a joke? That is exactly what we have proven under Mills. That's why we have a climate action plan, a 4-year climate action plan that is absolutely the necessary work that you must plan and do at the same time, that you must bring together all these diverse people in the state of Maine to combat this issue. And that is what this administration and this Democratic legislature has done. I have never been more proud to serve and to see that the very first words out of Governor Mills's mouth when she had her inauguration address was that she was going to do something about climate change, and indeed she did. And I've been there from the beginning. I couldn't be more proud to be a part of it. This legislature has put together so many different bills that absolutely are in line with this 4-year climate action plan. We can do it. We can do both. We should be very hopeful in this state because of what we've done. And we must continue to move forward because this is the issue. We only have till 2030 to get it right, to move in another direction, and before we really have effects that we cannot adapt to. We are very lucky in Maine. And again, we should be hopeful that this work can be accomplished because we have accomplished such a great deal in the last 4 years. I would love to be able to continue this work with another Democratic administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bloom. Next speaker is Kathleen Meal from Maine Conservation Voters.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Kathleen Meal, and as Director of Policy and Partnerships at Maine Conservation Voters, I have the honor of working every day with steadfast champions for Maine's people and our environment, climate, and democracy. Leaders like those with me here today and regular people across the state, scientists and economists, entrepreneurs and industry leaders, farmers and fishermen, parents and teachers, and people across every corner of our beautiful state who share a deep commitment to protecting the Maine we love and building the future we need. It's amazing what we accomplish together. Representative Bloom talked about the climate action plan that we developed, and let's go a little deeper on that. In 2020, even as we navigated the very worst of the COVID-19 pandemic, we came together to develop Maine Won't Wait, a 4-year plan for climate action. Grounded in science and community, this bold plan includes goals to transition the state to 80% clean renewable energy by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2045. To incentivize cleaner, cost-saving technologies like heat pumps, electric vehicles, and properly sited renewable power generation. To increase the total acreage of conserved land in Maine to 30% by 2030, and to create a healthier, safer, and more equitable future for all Maine people. This wasn't a plan that was handed down from on high. This plan was the result of the hard work of more than 250 Maine people who served in official roles on the Climate Council and its working groups, and hundreds more who logged on to virtual meetings, completed working group surveys, and advocated for a climate action plan that is ambitious, specific, and equitable. Maine Won't Wait set our state on the right path to addressing the climate crisis at the scale that science and justice demand. And with Governor Mills leading the way, progress towards safeguarding our climate future is undeniable. Governor Mills has acted decisively through legislation and executive action. She has galvanized overwhelming bipartisan support. She has made clear no problem is too large when we put our minds, ingenuity, and resources to work. And the cost of inaction is too great. Unfortunately, Maine people are all too familiar with inaction. We lived through 8 years of chaos and harm under the previous administration, and we cannot go back. Time and again, former Governor Paul LePage opposed basic environmental stewardship. He jeopardized our clean air, water, and wildlife, And he turned his back on the potential of clean energy as an economic engine for our state that will bring good paying jobs and long-term price stability. He kept the state dependent on oil and gas and actually worked to drill for oil in the Gulf of Maine, something the entire congressional delegation and every other East Coast governor opposed. He willfully ignored the priorities of Maine people, withholding voter-approved bond funding for the Land for Maine's future and vetoing a record number of bills during his 8 years in office. Several times, the legislature passed environmental bills by a wide bipartisan margins, but ended up just a few votes shy of the 2/3 needed to override his veto due to intense pressure from the governor and Republican legislative leadership. The differences between Governor Mills and Paul LePage could not be more clear, and the stakes could not be higher. If reelected, Governor Mills will continue her forward-looking approach to addressing the climate crisis, furthering our collective progress and building a stronger, more resilient state. 8 years of experience taught us that Paul LePage won't think twice about throwing that all away. Make no mistake, Maine's climate future is on the ballot in November. Maine Conservation Voters Action Fund supports the re-election of Governor Janet Mills over Paul LePage because we cannot go back to the past. Time is precious, and what we do in the next few years will determine what future we create for our children. Maine people know what kind of future we want to create, and with Governor Mills leading the way, that future is bright. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Our final speaker today is Cochran from Maine Youth Action.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cochran. I am the legislative director and co-founder of Maine Youth Action, an advocacy group that has been working on policy to address the climate crisis alongside partners like Maine Conservation Voters. It's good to see you all today, and it's such a beautiful place. This is my first time being at Howard Hill, and after exploring a little, I must say that the view was spectacular, something that really ought to be preserved for future generations. As already mentioned, this once was a place under attack by LePage, and considering his horrible track record on the environment and addressing the climate crisis, this is honestly no surprise to me. I've been involved in environmental policy over the past couple of years and have advocated alongside our youth for transformative legislation. Thanks to the hard work of the environmental community and champions in the legislature, we have been able to divest the $1.3 billion state pension fund from fossil fuels, expand our ecological reserve, create a Maine Climate Corps, and sign into law carbon neutrality by 2045 and so many other amazing accomplishments that could not have been done without the overwhelming grassroots advocacy efforts and political support it received. Not to mention, we've been able to work as a team on creating the Maine Won't Wait climate strategy, which has outlined a base plan on how to address the climate crisis straight on. Why I want to bring to your attention the successes we have achieved as a movement is to underline the importance of collaboration and grassroots advocacy taken in these projects. As a movement, we have been fortunate to have stakeholders directly at the table in every conversation, being engaged and heard. This collaboration to me as a young activist seems so unique in the midst of a political landscape where it seems like the public is rarely heard. I've never been so proud of my state when I got involved in the process, and it has motivated hundreds of our youth across Maine to be more engaged than ever, to be the ideal citizen. However, what I fear is that with Paul LePage possibly in office again, this reality would abruptly change. As we saw during his first term, the ideas of collaboration, grassroots advocacy, and compromise will fall by the wayside if Paul LePage were to win the governorship, and youth advocates like myself would no longer have the necessary voice in politics. We are facing a dire future as the climate crisis worsens, and having a governor that will ignore the issues will have huge long-term impacts that my generation are going to face. So my message to the voters of our state is this: when you're at the polls on November 8th, take a look around. See the pristine environment, the beauty Maine holds. Take a look at her clear blue skies, the fiery reds and golds on the trees, and think about the impact your vote will have on what you see before you. Think about how your vote will affect your children or your grandchildren or any of the young folks you know. And keep in mind that your vote will determine how you want our future to be. And personally, if I were to have that vote, I would make sure we put someone in office that can protect the virtues of advocacy and protect our climate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cole. And thank you to everybody who came out today. Senator Breen, Representative Bloom, Kathleen, Cole, and also joined by House candidate Dan Shigori. Thank you for joining us to talk about this really important issue.